Welcome to My Recovery Works Word 1 Part 1. In this class, you'll use Word to create documents. You'll learn how to save, open, and close documents. You'll also learn how to edit documents by inserting and deleting text. You'll move and copy text, learn how to use undo and redo, and we'll finish the class by learning how to format characters. For example, we'll change the font and font size of characters and learn how to add bold, italics, and underline to the text. To begin, you'll want to open Word. There's a couple of different ways to do that. From your Windows desktop, you can open Word by double-clicking on the Word icon. Look on your desktop now. See if you have a Microsoft Word icon. I'm circling my mouse around the Microsoft Word icon right now. It reads Microsoft Word 2010 and it has a blue W. If you do have an icon, it may not be in the same position as mine. But if you do have an icon to open Word, you can move your mouse pointer to the Microsoft Word icon and you can double click. Go ahead and do that if you have the icon. I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate another way to open Word for those of you who don't have an icon. At the bottom of the desktop is a taskbar. On the left-hand side of the taskbar is a Start button. To access the Start button, move your mouse pointer to the Start button and click. Then go ahead and find Microsoft Word 2010 and click. And now you should have the Microsoft Word program open. Please note that during this course, if you want to stop the course and catch up, you can always press the stop button, catch up, and then you can play the class one more time. Here we are in Microsoft Word. Let's talk about the Microsoft Word 2010 screen, which is sometimes called the Microsoft Word interface. We'll start from the top and work our way down. At the very top of the screen is the title bar. It shows us we're working in Microsoft Word. And it displays document 1 because this is the first document we've created during this work session. Word is used to create documents such as calendars, resumes, cover letters, reports, and essays. Those are just some examples. And today you'll have a chance to create some documents. When you create a document, you'll save it and you'll give it a name so that you can find it again. So you'll notice as we create a calendar, we'll go ahead and save that file and give it the name calendar. When we create a letter, the word letter will always be in the file name. So once we create documents, we'll always give them a very specific name so we can find them easily when we want to use them again. So the document title will change in the title bar according to what document you're working on. Over on the left-hand side of the screen is called the Quick Access Toolbar, and that is because it contains buttons that you will use quite often when you're working in Word. For example, if you move your pointer over the Save button, you'll see a tooltip that will show you that this is the Save button, and you'll use this quite frequently as you're working in Word to save the documents that you've created. Word also has tabs, for example, File, Home, and Insert. The Home tab is active right now. It's a lighter shade of gray than the other tabs. Each tab has a ribbon associated with it, and sometimes people call that the ribbon bar. Each ribbon is divided into groups. So in the Home tab, there's the Clipboard group, Font, Paragraph, Styles, and Editing group. Within those groups, there are buttons that will perform different types of commands. So for example, in the font group, I can see that I have the bold button represented by the letter B, and we'll use that later in the course. When you select a different tab, the ribbon will display different buttons. Move your mouse pointer to the Insert tab and click, and notice that the ribbon displays different commands or different types of buttons. We're going to mainly use the Home tab today, so move your mouse pointer over to the Home tab. My ruler is displayed in this area, This is the horizontal ruler. Over here on the left is the vertical ruler. You want to make sure that your ruler is displayed also. To turn the ruler on and off, you can use the View tab. Let's take a look at that so you can make sure that your ruler is turned on. Take your mouse pointer, move it to the View tab, and click. And in the Show group, for the ruler to display, you want to make sure there's a check mark in Ruler. Notice, if I click, when there's a check in the check box, it takes the check box off and the ruler doesn't display. But for this class, we do want the ruler to display, so I'm going to go ahead and click and bring that check box back. Let's go ahead and return to the Home tab by taking the mouse pointer and clicking on the Home tab. You'll notice in this area, where I'm circling my mouse, there's a flashing insertion point. Sometimes that's called the cursor. When we begin typing in the document, the text will display at that insertion point. So you always want to know where your insertion point is in a document so that you'll know where your text that you're keying will display. At the bottom of the screen in Word is the status bar. It has information on the left side, and then it has information on the right side. The left side tells you how many pages are in the document, so we're currently on page 1 of 1 pages. It also displays how many words are in your document, so if you had to create a report and you needed to create it and know how many words were in that report, this area would display that for you. Insert means that the text that you type will be inserted at the insertion point. We're going to leave our computer set to insert mode today. We will not change that for this class. Moving over to the right, if I hover, which means just pointing my mouse over a button, if I hover over the Print Layout button, it displays the tooltip that tells me what this does. This is Print Layout, and this is the View button that we are going to use throughout this course. Print Layout means that how the document is displayed on the screen is very close to how it will print when you're finished with it. There are other View buttons to the right of Print Layout, but we won't use those today. And the last thing that we want to talk about in the status bar are the zoom controls. You can zoom in or out of a Word document according to what you want to see in the document. I'm at 90% zoom right now. If I wanted to change that, I could use the minus symbol to zoom out. Notice that it changes the view of my document and it changes the percentage. And I can use the plus button to zoom back in. The other way that I can change the zoom is to move my mouse to this bar and move it to the left or the right. For now, let's make sure that our zoom is at 100%. And then last thing that I want you to notice about the Word 2010 screen, up here in the top right, there's a Help button. When you're working in Word on your own, if you have questions, you may use the Help menu to search for answers. So let's go ahead and begin by creating a new document. There are two ways to create a new document. You can create a blank document, and when you open Word, it has already created a blank document for you called Document 1, but you can also create your own blank documents. You can also create documents based on a template. And a template is a pre-formatted document in Word that already has text and other elements in it to save you from having to type a document. So, for example, you could create a calendar template, or if you needed a resume, you could create a resume template. You could also create a letter template, maybe a cover letter that you might be using to apply for a job. Let's begin by creating a new document. To create a new document, take your mouse pointer, move it up to the File tab, and click on File. Next, take your mouse pointer, move it down to New with your mouse pointer, click one time. Notice that blank document is highlighted. We're going to go ahead and create a blank document. So to create the blank document, you may either point to it and double click, or with it highlighted, you can move here to the Create button. When we open documents in this class, I'm going to use the double click method, but I wanted to show you the method where you use the Create button if you find that way easier for you. So whichever method you want to use, let's go ahead and create a blank document. So I'm going to double click. All right, so here's another blank document. Remember, we had document 1 opened. Now we have a blank document called document 2. You can have more than one document open in Word because sometimes you'll need to go back and forth between the documents. And you can tell that you have more than one document open. If you look down in your taskbar in this area, you'll see an overlap that shows you have more than one document open. And if you move your mouse pointer over the shortcut for Word, it will display a list of what documents you have open. I have document 1 and document 2 open. And the document that's on top is called the active document, and that's highlighted. Your computer may look a little different when you do this. Instead of displaying your documents in a list, your document might display them as thumbnails, which are almost like mini versions of the documents. All right, so let's just move our mouse pointer back up to return to the document. And we're going to use this document to create a letter. But before we do that, let's go ahead and create a new document based on a template. So we're going to use the same method to begin with that we used when we created a blank document. Take your mouse pointer, move it to the File tab, and click. Move down to the New command, and click. Notice Office.com Templates displays in this area of your screen. And underneath, you're going to see folders that contain lots of different types of templates. Business templates, certificate templates. You could search through the folders to find a template, but a simpler way is to come into this area, which is called the search box, and to type in a keyword so that you can find the template. Go ahead and take your mouse, and I want you to notice that when you move your mouse to the search bar, it displays as what we call an I-beam. So move the I-beam into the search box or search bar. You can refer to that as either one. Click, and then you'll see an insertion point ready for you to type text. With that insertion point flashing, it doesn't matter where your mouse is. You won't be using your mouse at this point. You could even take your mouse and just move it slightly out of the way. Let's go ahead and search for a calendar template. Now, spelling is going to be important here, and this can either be in upper or lower case. So we'll go ahead and type calendar. Yours is probably in lowercase, and that's fine. I just happen to have my caps lock turned on. So once you type calendar, you'll press the Enter key on your keyboard. And then your computer will search Office.com to find templates. There's lots of calendar templates. I'd like you to find the 1 month basic calendar and a year. Mine displays in the first row. Yours may display somewhere else. So look for the 1 month basic calendar and a year. Notice that there are lots of calendars here, and you could even scroll down by using the arrow if you wanted, or by clicking and holding the scroll bar with your left mouse button. So find a 1 month basic calendar, and if you can't find that template, it's fine to use another one. But look for this one and use this one if you can find it. All right, so to create this template, you're going to go ahead and double click on it, or click on it one time and choose download. I'm going to go ahead and use the double click method. So I'll double click. And it's going to ask me what month and year I want to use to create a calendar. That's going to display the current month and current year, so you don't need to change anything about that. We'll go ahead and accept that. We'll move our mouse pointer to the OK button, and we'll click OK. At the next information that we get, we're still going to just click OK. And there's our calendar. All right, and so your calendar is going to display whatever month and year it is. All right, so now you have a calendar. So you could add dates to this. You could save it. You could print it out. Let's go ahead and add a date for the 8th of the month. So to do that, I want you to go ahead and take your mouse pointer, which looks like an I-beam. Whenever we're ready to enter text in a Word document, our mouse changes to an I-beam. So move your mouse under the 8 and click. And make sure it's underneath the number, because that's where you're going to put the information for events, meetings, appointments, etc. So let's go ahead and put in a computer class. So let's type Word space 1. And then let's press the Enter key. And we'll go ahead and put a time. So let's put 9 o'clock space dash, and then we'll do 11 o'clock. All right. So we've now input one event onto our calendar. When you're working in Word, the file or the document that you're working on is in the memory of the computer, but if you were to close that document, you would lose the information for good. So it's important to make sure that you save any documents that you want to use again. To save documents, you're also going to use the File tab. Now, for purposes of this class, we're going to use a flash drive in order to save our files. A flash drive is also called a USB drive or a thumb drive. If you have a flash drive, I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate for you, and you can follow along with me how to save. If you don't have a flash drive, you can go ahead and save the file to My Documents. But if you have a flash drive, I'd encourage you to use that, because that way you'll have your file saved, and you can edit that file again from the computer you're working on or any other computer. So we're going to go ahead and put the flash drive in now. Once you put your flash drive in, you'll get an autoplay window, and that comes up in order for you to select the first option, which is Open Folder to view files. We're not going to select that today. We need to save some files onto our USB drive before we can open it to view those files. So when this autoplay window displays, you want to go ahead and close it by clicking X. Now your flash drive is ready to save your file. So to save it, go ahead and take your mouse pointer, click on the File tab, and then click on Save. You're now in a dialog box, and a dialog box asks you to input information, and then when you're done, you'll be able to continue. We're looking at the Save As dialog box. This is going to let us choose where we want to save our document to, and it's also going to allow us to give it a file name. This area on the left is called the navigation bar, and if you took Computer Newbies, you would have worked with this navigation pane. We want to go ahead and find our USB drive. To do that, we're going to need to see all of this computer area. So scroll down so you can see the areas on your computer where you can save, and you want to find your USB drive. Now mine is actually called USB drive. Yours will be called whatever the name of the USB drive manufacturer is. So you want to make sure you can identify that USB drive. It will be the last drive in the list. Mine has the letter G following it. Yours may have a different letter. Well, once you find that USB drive, you want to take your mouse, which displays as the hand icon, and you want to click one time. And then you'll notice that your USB drive is highlighted, indicating that this is where you're going to save the file to. And up here, it will also indicate that you're going to save it to the USB drive. All right. Now the file name, the computer is going to give you a file name based on the document you've created. Now we've created a calendar, so we want to save this with a very specific name to our file so we can find it again. So we're going to save it with the word calendar, and then we also are going to save it with the month and the year. Now your month and year may be different than mine is. So what we're going to do to change the name of the file, go ahead and take your I-beam, click into the words that display. They may be different than my words. And then that will become highlighted. When you're working in Windows, when you have text highlighted, you can type right over it to replace that text. You don't have to press your backspace or delete key on the keyboard. So let's go ahead and create this, and we're going to put the month. Mine is December, space, then the year. My year is 2016. Yours may be different. Then space, and then we'll type calendar. File names can actually be 250 characters, which I doubt you'd ever make a file name that long. But you want file names to be long enough so that you'll be able to find the file again, but not so long that it's cumbersome to type the name. So this is a good name. It tells me this is a calendar for December 2016. All right, so we've indicated we want to save it to our flash drive, and we've given it a file name. To finish this process, we'll take our mouse and we'll click on the Save button. And now we've saved it. And notice where it used to say document up here, now because we've saved it with a different name, it refers to this file or document as December 2016 calendar. All right, so we've saved this. We're done working with it. So let's go ahead and close it. So let's click on the File tab and click Close. And because it's saved, it will go ahead and close that. Now, if you haven't saved all your latest changes, you would get a message asking if you wanted to save your changes, but you have saved them. So now we're back to a blank document. What if you wanted to open the calendar file again? What if you wanted to add another date to it? Let's go ahead and learn how to do that. Go ahead and take your mouse, move it up to the File tab and click. Move down to Open and click. The Open dialog box will now display. During this work session, I've already saved a file to the USB drive, so when I open a file, it's going to go ahead and show me the information in the USB drive because that's where I had saved information to during this work session. I only have one file that I've created on this USB drive, and remember, it's our calendar. We're going to go ahead and open that calendar. We'll take our mouse pointer. Now remember, to open, we can either double click or we could click one time to select the file name and we could click open. Let's take our mouse pointer and double click. There it is. There's our file again. Let's go ahead and add something to this. Let's add a date to the 15th. Remember to do that. Take your I-beam, click underneath, 15. Let's go ahead and put down a Word 2 class. Try that again, Word 2. I'm going to press the Enter key on my computer and we'll make that 9 to 11. Now remember, we all have different typing speeds, so if it takes you longer to accomplish some tasks than I'm completing them, remember you can always press the Stop button. You can complete a task and you can come back and play the class again. All right, so we've changed this document. Now remember, we had talked about earlier, when you're working in a document, you're in the memory of the computer, meaning if you don't save your changes and you close your document, you'll lose whatever changes you've made. So if we want to make sure the information for the Word 2 class that we put on the 15th saves, we need to save this document. Once a document has been saved one time, all you have to do is use the Save command to save the new version. So to use the Save command, let's move our mouse, go ahead and move it up to the File tab and click, and then come to the Save and click that. Now the Save As dialog box does not display this time. The Save As dialog box only displays the first time you use the save command. After you have saved it and given it a name, as you make changes to the document, you will go to File, Save, and it will simply save over the document. Now, there are ways to save different versions of a file using Save As, but we'll talk about that later in the course. All right, so we've created a document from a template. We've used the Save command to save it to our USB drive as December 2016 calendar, or whatever month and year you're currently using. And then we've added information to the calendar, and we saved by going to File, Save. And now we have an updated saved version of this file. We're finished with this file, so let's go ahead and close it. To close a file, you'll move to the File tab, and then you'll move down to Close and click that. Right, and now we're back at a blank document. We're going to use this blank document to create a letter. Letter writing is an important skill, and it's very important that you lay your letter out correctly on the page. We're going to go ahead and key this letter. Now, I want you to notice that there are margins in your document. Remember, when you print a document, it doesn't print to the edge of the paper. There's a white space at the top of the document. That's your top margin. At the left, that's your left margin. Over here on the right is your right margin, and then there's space down at the bottom. So we're going to begin keying, and we're going to key a letter to Mr. Steve Dean. Remember, as you key this letter, you can always stop if you are a little bit behind, and then you can catch up. Because remember, like I said, we all have different typing speeds. All right, so let's begin typing our letter at the insertion point. We'll begin by typing Mr. period, and you're going to space between each word, Steve, space, Dean. Now, to get to the next line, you'll need to press the Enter key on the keyboard. Now we'll go ahead and type the address. 11, space, 204, space, street. Now, I'm going to stop indicating that you need to put a space between each word by saying the word space, because you get the idea now. Just make sure you put a space between each word. When you get to the end of the line, press Enter. Now, you may notice that this spacing is not correct letter spacing. In Word 2010, when you press the Enter key, it creates paragraph spacing. For a letter in the address, you want to use single spacing. So we will come back and we will change the spacing just in the address. And we'll do that once we've typed the whole letter. I'll show you the technique to do that inside of Word 2010. For now, let's go ahead and type the city name, which is Masonville, comma, New York is our state. Now make sure you press the space bar 2 times after you type the state and before you put the zip code in. All right, and then remember that you are always going to press the Enter key at the end of a line. All right, so we've got the address typed. Now we'll type the salutation. We'll press Enter. And now we're going to type what's called the body of the letter. Now when you type the body of the letter, you'll be typing paragraphs, and you're going to use auto text wrapping. That means as you're typing and you get to the end of a line, you'll just continue to type. You will not press Enter until you get all the way to the end of the paragraph, and I will indicate that to you. I'm going to go ahead and type. Now I'm going to type the letter in pretty quickly. And you can follow along with me. Now, if you make a mistake, like I just did there, you can press your backspace key. The other thing I wanted to demonstrate to you is if you do make a keying error, I just made a keying error there, I'll get some red wavy lines. So this is telling me that this is misspelled. If that happens, and you see the red wavy lines, it means that the word is misspelled, and you can fix that. Now, I'm going to show you how to fix this, but I'm going to encourage you to get the whole letter typed in before you go back to the red wavy lines to fix them. But how do you fix a spelling error that's indicated by a red wavy line? Go ahead and take your mouse, right-click on the word with the red wavy lines underneath. Notice at the top it's going to give you suggestions for spelling. If it gives you the correct suggestion, you'll click on it, and notice how that replaces the misspelled word with the correct spelling. Now, sometimes the computer is not able to give you the correct spelling. If that's the case, you would just have to come back and edit that word, and we'll talk more about that. So let me go ahead and finish typing this. Remember, you can press your backspace if you make mistakes. I will get this typed in and follow along with me. Now, when you get to the word achievements, you will press Enter to move to the next paragraph. I want you to notice after you type sincerely yours, you'll need to press Enter 2 times to leave space to sign a name. So after each line or paragraph, we press Enter once. After sincerely yours, we're going to press Enter 2 times. So there's our letter in its entirety. If you're still typing, go ahead, press Stop. Take as long as you need to type this letter, and then if you've noticed that there are red wavy underlines under any words, you can go ahead and fix those. With the exception of if you do get red wavy underlines underneath Masonville, we'll talk in the next part of the class about why you might get red wavy underlines under a word that's spelled correctly and how you could fix that. So like I said, finish typing the letter and fix any words that are indicated as misspellings with red wavy underlines. If you need to stop the class, do that, and then just come back into the class when you're ready. All right, so now you have the letter typed. You may have Masonville indicated as a misspelling with red wavy underline. I want you to notice that mine doesn't have the red wavy underline, and that's because I've typed this letter before. Now, the first time I typed it, it had red wavy underlines, but I know that Masonville is spelled correctly. The reason that the first time you key this word, you'll get a red wavy underline is this word is not in the computer's dictionary, so the computer doesn't recognize it. So with a word like a proper name, like a city or a person's last name, you can add it to the dictionary, so the next time you type that word, it will not put red wavy underlines underneath it because it will recognize it. And you would use the same method you used to fix misspelling. You would take your mouse, you would right-click on Masonville, and if you had the red wavy underlines, one of the options in this top area would be Add to Dictionary. So you could add it to the dictionary if you needed to. And I wanted to show you on my computer because I've already added it to the dictionary. It does not show up with the red wavy underlines. Now, the other thing we need to talk about, remember we said that the spacing should just be single spacing in the address. In this version of Word, whenever the Enter key is pressed, it creates paragraph spacing, and that works well for most documents. And it even works well for the body of our letter, but it does not work well for the address. So we're going to need to select the first 2 lines of the address, and just for this part, we're going to need to choose no spacing. And I want you to make a note of this, because if you're using Word 2010 to key letters, it's very important that after you key the letter, you change the spacing in the first 2 lines of the address and the letter so it has no spacing. So you're going to choose the first 2 lines. And to do that, you're just taking your I-beam and you're moving it over. Now I have a mini toolbar showing up, and you may have that also. We're going to just ignore that for now. Now once that's selected, you want to go to the Styles group and you want to click No Spacing. And now we've got that fixed. Like I said, make sure you make a note of that, because that is a change to Word 2010 and later versions of Word, and that's really something you want to make sure you understand, especially if you've typed letters in earlier versions of Word. You did not have to do that, but now you'll have to. All right, so there's our letter. So we need to save this, and we're actually going to call this invitation letter. So we're going to use the same method to save it to our USB flash drive as we did for the calendar. So you're going to take your mouse, you're going to click on the File tab, and then you're going to click on Save. All right, there's the first file we saved. We're saving to the USB drive. We don't need to change that because remember in this work session, we had selected the USB drive to save to. But we do have to change the file name. Now, file name is already highlighted. We're going to replace that. Now remember, because that's highlighted, we don't have to press backspace or delete. We'll go ahead and type invitation letter. Remember, if you make an error, you can always backspace. I've done that a few times already. So invitation letter. And this is going to save to our USB flash drive. So go ahead and type that in. Good. Now that you have that typed in, you want to go ahead and click the Save button. All right. So it's saved, and we can tell that because up here in the title bar, it reads invitation letter. Great. Okay, next, let's do a little editing in the document. Let's say that we wanted to insert a word into the document. Now to insert a word, you need to move your insertion point, which is sometimes called the cursor, to where you want to insert the word. We are going to go ahead and add a title to John Smith's name. To do that, we need to create a blank line under his name. And go ahead and move your mouse, which is an I-beam, because we are working in the document. Take it and move it right after the H in Smith and click. You've now moved your insertion point to that area of the screen. Now press the Enter key. That will take us to a blank line underneath, and now type Vice President. Now we have just discovered that this is another place in the closing of the document, in the person's name, where we would want to change the spacing, and we would want to change it to no spacing. To do that, we're going to go ahead and choose the text, and we're going to come up and click on no spacing. All right. So that is how you insert text. What if you wanted to delete text in a document? To delete text, you need to become familiar with both the delete key on the keyboard and the backspace key. So let's say that we've decided that we want to delete the word R, this second word. Well, the backspace key is going to delete characters on the left of the cursor. The delete key is going to delete characters on the right of the cursor. So let's say we wanted to use the backspace key to delete the word R. You need to move your insertion point, if you're using the backspace key, to the right of the word you're going to delete. So you're going to take your I-beam, you're going to move it after the E and R, and you're going to click, and that moves your insertion point. And once you have your insertion point where you want it, you can take your mouse and move it out of the way. Sometimes people try to leave that mouse in this area where they're editing. That makes it pretty difficult to see what you're trying to edit. When you're in the edit mode, your mouse is not important to you. What's important to you is the insertion point. So take your mouse, move it out of the way. And now we're going to use our backspace key to delete the word R. So we're going to press backspace 3 times. And it's deleting letters to the left of it. All right, now, when you're editing or doing some other things in Word, sometimes you change your mind, and that's where it's a good idea to know how to use the undo and redo keys. Those are in that quick access toolbar that we talked about at the beginning of class. Right up here, here's the quick access toolbar. This is the undo button, and it's going to undo the last thing we did, which was typing. So I want you to click undo. And it brings back the word R, because right now we are just getting to know Word, so we're actually going to make some changes, and then we'll use our undo just to bring them back, because we're just practicing. So that was our backspace key. So when you're going to use your backspace key, remember it deletes characters to the left. You could also use your delete key. Really, it's just kind of a matter of preference, but remember that the delete key deletes characters on the right. So you're going to take your I-beam, you're going to click to the left of the A, and now we're going to use our delete key, and that's going to delete characters on the right. Now your delete key is one of the 6 keys above the arrow keys on your keyboard. Press delete 3 times, and you've now deleted the word R again. Now, let's say you change your mind. You want that word back again. Use your undo key, come up here, press undo. And look at, in this case, I'm going to have to press it 3 times because it's undoing each letter one at a time. So you'll have to press that 3 times, and then that word will appear again. All right, so we deleted the word R a couple of times. We used our undo key to bring it back. But there is one change that we made to this that we haven't saved. We went ahead and added the word Vice President under John Smith. Let's go ahead and make sure we save that change. When you edit a letter or make any type of changes to it, you always want to save those changes. And the quickest way to save over the old version, so our old version was this letter, but it did not have the title Vice President. Our new version contains Vice President. So to save it as this new version, we're just simply going to come up to the Save button, and we're going to click. And that saves the file. Now, when I clicked on that, I'll do that one more time, I see a blue what's called busy wheel moving, and that indicates that I've saved this file. Now, as an alternative, we could have saved it by going to the File tab, but you want to, when you use Word, use the most efficient and quickest ways. So moving up here to this button is the quickest way. And I'm pointing that out to you because if you've used Word before, you may have no other methods of performing some of the commands that we perform. There may be 2 or 3 different ways to perform commands in Word. For purposes of this class, I'm always going to try to show you the quickest way. But if you've used Word and you know another method for some of these commands and you're more comfortable with that, that's certainly appropriate to do that. All right, now let's talk about how to insert date and time in a document. We're talking about how to use the date and time function, but because this is a letter, we're only going to insert the date. Now, I want to point out to you that we are not going to insert the date in the correct position. The date should actually be at the top of the document. We're going to insert it in the incorrect position because later on in the class, we're going to learn how to move text in a document. All right, so here's what I want you to do. I want you to create a blank line between the address and the salutation, which is Dear Mr. Dean. So go ahead and take your mouse and click after the zip code, which is 13804. Remember, when you click, that moves your insertion point there, and then press the Enter key, and that will take you a blank line below. So to add the date, instead of typing it, we are going to use the Insert Date and Time button. You want to take your mouse pointer, click on the Insert tab, and you're going to move over here into the text group, and you're going to click Date and Time. There are different formats for you to choose. I want you to choose the one that's most appropriate for a letter. That's the third one down. It's going to display the current date. Your date is going to be different than mine. I'm going to go ahead and click. I want you to notice that the date is set to update automatically. So, if I created this letter and then I opened it 2 weeks from now, that date would change. That is how it is set by default. That means how it was programmed when the program was loaded on your computer. Now, you could change that. If you didn't want that date to update automatically, you could turn that off, but we'll leave it at the default. So go ahead and click OK, and you've now inserted the date. Now, we've made a change. You should save your file. It's recommended either each time you make a change or at least every 5 minutes. So since we've made a change, let's go ahead and practice saving. Move your mouse pointer up to the Save button and click. Now, we want to return to the Home tab because we're going to be using that later in the class. Take your mouse, move it to the Home tab, and click. All right. Next, let's talk about how you would select different parts of your document and delete them. Now remember, this is just practice. We have kind of a short document, so we don't want to delete too much. So we're actually going to be deleting and then using undo just to get some practice. We've talked about selecting text, and we know we can use the mouse, which will look like an I-beam, to select text. But there are shortcuts that will save you some time for how you would select a word, a sentence, a paragraph, or even an entire document. What if we wanted to delete the word are again? Now remember, we had done that before, and we had used the backspace key and the delete key to delete one character at a time. If you wanted to delete the whole word quickly, you could select the whole word, and then you could use your delete or backspace key. Go ahead to select the word are with your mouse, take the I-beam and place it anywhere inside the word are, and then double click, which is 2 quick clicks. That will select the word are. Now once you have made a selection, and this is just a word, but any selection in Word, you can delete it by pressing either the delete or backspace key, but let's use the delete key because it's easier to remember to delete, to use the delete key. So find the delete key on your keyboard and press, and you just deleted the word are. And see how that's quicker than deleting it one character at a time like we did earlier in the class. Let's go ahead and undo that change by moving to the mouse pointer and clicking undo. Now, how would you select a whole sentence and then delete that sentence? Well, first thing you want to do, you want to unselect anything that you've previously selected. To do that, you're going to take your I-beam and you're going to click in any blank area. Okay, so before you select, always make sure the previous selection is unselected. And now we're going to use our control key on the keyboard. The control key is at the bottom left of the keyboard, and what I'd like you to do is press and hold down the control key, and then take your mouse, which is an I-beam, and I want you to move it anywhere in this first sentence. We are celebrating our 3rd anniversary. Keep that control key pressed down and click. And now you can release both the mouse button and the control key, and you've just selected that sentence. Remember, anything that's selected in Word can be deleted by pressing the delete key. So go ahead and press the delete key. And you've deleted it. But we want to do a little more practice, so let's go ahead and click undo and bring that back. Remember, before we make our next selection, we need to unselect what's previously been selected. Take your I-beam, move it to a blank area, and click. All right, let's delete a paragraph. How do you delete a paragraph? Well, first you have to select it. To do that, you're going to triple click. So you're going to take your I-beam, move it into the paragraph, and triple click. Now that that's selected, press your delete key. And you've just deleted it. But because we're just practicing, we're going to go ahead use our undo key. Now, let's unselect what we've selected by taking our I-beam and clicking. Now, how would you select and then delete your entire document? The easiest way to do that is with a shortcut key. So to select the entire document or all of the document, you're going to use and your insertion point can be anywhere in the document, and then you're going to press and hold your control key and then tap A. And you've now just selected the whole document. Now, if for some reason you wanted to delete this whole document, then you can go ahead and try this. Press your delete key, and it's gone. We need to make sure we come up and hit the undo key, because we definitely want to undo that. We don't want to lose all that information. And then take your mouse and click. All right? So those are good selection techniques. We used it to help us delete text. You could also use it to select text that you might want to change the formatting of, or text that you wanted to move or copy. And we'll be using those selection techniques with moving and copying and formatting as we continue through the class. All right, so now we need to talk about how to cut and paste text. Sometimes you want to make copies of text, or you want to move text in your document. So if you wanted to move, you could use the technique that's referred to as cut and paste. So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and move the line. We are celebrating our first anniversary. We're going to, and actually, it's our third anniversary, and we're going to move that line. That sentence. So first thing we need to do is select that sentence. Now remember, the quickest way to do that is move your insertion point anywhere inside the sentence, press and hold your control key on your keyboard and click. All right, so this is the text that we want to move. To move it, first we need to cut it. So we're going to move up here into the clipboard group. And you'll see the scissors that represent cut. Go ahead and point to either the scissors or the word cut. And click your mouse. Now it no longer displays on your document. That's actually moved to a part of the computer called the clipboard. The clipboard holds any information that you cut until you're ready to paste it. So remember, we selected the text and then we pressed cut. Now we need to move our insertion point to where we want to paste it. We're going to actually paste it right here before the T into show. So you're going to take your I-beam and click. Remember, when you do that, that moves your insertion point. It should be flashing before 2. Now we're going to go ahead and paste it. There's many different options when we paste, but we're going to use just the most basic paste for purposes of this class. So you want to take your pointer and move it where I have mine. Move it right up here to the clipboard, right up above the word paste. Click one time, and now you have just cut and then pasted that information. There are other ways to cut and paste by using commands on your keyboard or a right click. I'm not going to demonstrate those to you. Sometimes when I teach the class, people ask me about those. If you know another technique to cut and paste, you can certainly use that. But like I said, for purposes of this class, we're going to go ahead and use the technique with the buttons. All right, so let's talk about copying and pasting text, which the technique is similar. When you copy, though, you're going to have a copy of whatever you selected. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to create a blank line here between Dear Mr. Dean and this paragraph, and we're going to paste the words third anniversary there. We're going to make a copy of them. So to create that blank line, go ahead and take your I-beam, click down after the comma and Dean, press your Enter key. All right, so now we have that blank line. So if you're going to paste something into your document, always make sure that you have created the space where you want to paste it before you copy it. So we are going to take our I-beam and we're going to select 3rd anniversary, and to do that we're just going to take the I-beam, put it to the left of the T, and then drag across. We've now got that selected. All right, so now we're going to copy that. We're going to come up here into the clipboard group, take your mouse, point to either the word copy or the little pieces of paper next to it, and click. Now it almost looks like nothing has happened, but what has happened is it has moved a copy of what we've selected, which is 3rd anniversary, to the clipboard, and it's holding that until we're ready to paste it. So to paste it, we need to move our insertion point where we want to paste it. Remember, we created this blank line between Dear Mr. Dean and that first paragraph. We're going to come and click, put our insertion point there. Now remember, there's lots of different methods, there's lots of different ways to paste, and we're just using the most basic. So you want to come up, click on Paste. And there you've done it. You now have 3rd anniversary here and 3rd anniversary there. So you have made a copy. So just remember, when you're cutting or copying, you select whatever it is you want to cut or copy, and then you click on either cut or copy. Remember, that moves it into the clipboard. The clipboard holds it there until you move your insertion point where you want to paste it, and you click Paste. It's important to remember, when you make changes to a document, you want to save them. So let's go up to the Save button and click. Let's practice the cut and paste technique again, because we need to make sure the date is at the top of the document. Now, a technique that you can use to move text in your document is called drag and drop. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate that to you. That's a little bit quicker. What I want to do is I want to take the address and I want to drag it and I want to drop it underneath the date. So to do that, I'm going to select the text that I want to move by dragging across it. And then once I do that, I'm going to go ahead and move my pointer into the text. I'm going to press and hold down, and I'm going to drag my insertion point right here to the left of Dear Mr. Dean. Now, as I'm dragging, I get a pointer arrow with a tiny square underneath it, and I also get a flashing insertion point. And now I just drag and drop. Now, dragging and dropping may take a little bit of practice. So if you try it and it didn't work, you can press your undo key. I'm going to do that just to demonstrate again. So dragging and dropping, I'm pressing and holding down, selecting all of that text. I'm taking my pointer. I've got something called a mini toolbar that we'll use when we're formatting. I'm just going to ignore that for right now. I'm going to take my mouse pointer, press and hold down. I'm actually going to move it to the left of where I want to put it and press. Okay, so that's dragging and dropping. If you need a little more practice with that, you can always stop and practice that again. So if you need to stop, go ahead and do that, and then come back to the class. I'll show you another technique if you are unable to do drag and drop, because some folks really kind of struggle with that. So practice drag and drop, come back to the class, and I'll show you another method that you may want to use instead of drag and drop. All right, so you practice drag and drop. If you were successful, that's wonderful. If you were not able to move that address under the date using drag and drop, press undo, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to press undo till I get this document back how it started. Dragging and dropping is a really great quick method, but it basically is just a shortcut for cutting and pasting. So another way that you could move this address underneath the date would be to have it selected and then just come up here and click Cut. And then come down here with your I-beam, click before the D because it's going to position it above it, and then just come and click Paste. So that's an alternate to dragging and dropping. Right? So when you're done with this section of the class, the date should be at the top, followed by the address, followed by the salutation, which reads, Dear Mr. Dean. And then you want to make sure you save that by coming up and clicking the Save button. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about formatting text in your document. To format text, you're going to use the font group in the Home tab. Any text that you want to format, you'll need to select it first and then choose the formatting option. So we're going to focus on formatting the words third anniversary. Now I want you to note that this is just practice. So we're going to take third anniversary, we're going to change quite a lot about it. I want you to keep in mind that if this was a business letter, you would have to consider the audience you were sending this to. So generally, business letters are not going to have a lot of formatting. You are not going to want to add a lot of color or underlining to a business letter. You would more likely maybe add bold or italics to make words stand out. Where you would use the font formatting more would be if you were creating a flyer, maybe to advertise a meeting or some type of a work function or something like that, or something personal, like an event you were holding. But remember, we're just practicing, so we are going to use a lot of formatting options with third anniversary, just to get the practice in. So let's go ahead and highlight third anniversary. And let's change something about it. In our font group, one of the choices we have is font. And font just means the shape and the styles of the letter. So we're using a Calibri font right now. And that's just a very basic font. But you, in certain types of documents, might want to change maybe to some type of script or calligraphy type font. Or if you were doing something for children, you might want to find a font that's a little more casual. When you click this drop-down arrow next to the font, you'll notice lots of different choices. The first thing you'll see are recently used fonts, and those are listed in alphabetical order. And then it shows all fonts, and they're listed. So you can actually scroll down to find different fonts. Now, as I look, let's say I looked at all fonts and I wanted to see what Arial would look like. I want you to notice that I get a preview. So when I choose Arial, I've selected third anniversary. I get a preview of how that's going to look. And if I choose Arial Black, that shows me a preview of that. So let's say we want to change it to Arial. Let's go ahead and click on Arial, and we've now changed that. So this place is Arial. You can also change the size of font. Font is measured in points. The default font in Word is 11 points because research has showed that that's the most readable. If you wanted to change that, though, you could. Let's say we wanted to change third anniversary to 12. Hit the drop-down arrow, click on 12, and that will change it. Now, sometimes people aren't quite sure what size they want to change it to, so they want to experiment and take a look at different sizes and find the one they like best. If that's the case, you can use the Grow Font or Shrink Font button. So let's try that. Third anniversary is still selected. Let's grow the font, which increases the font size, by clicking. And can you see how we've increased it or grown it from 11, or I'm sorry, we were at 12 to 14 to 16. Let's bring it back down to 14 by using the Shrink Font button. Great. Okay. Now let's move on down to here. If you want to make text bold, you simply come and click on the B for bold. And that would make that stand out. If you wanted to make font italicized, you would click the I for italics. And you can click the U to make it underlined. Now, if there is a drop-down arrow next to a button, that means there's more choices. So you can click the drop-down button. And the choices in this area, or I can actually change the way this looks. Maybe I'll make it thicker. And I can also change the color. I'll change that to red. So those are all options that are available to you. Now we're going to skip over to this button. This is called your font color button. Now notice there's an arrow next to it so you have more choices. But if you were just to click on it, it would add a red color. Now if you don't like red and you want to change it to a different color, you can hit your drop down arrow and you could choose a different color. Let's say I wanted it to be blue. Now when the text is selected, that color may look different than it actually would print. So to see the color, you're going to need to unselect by taking your I-beam and clicking, and that unselects it. Now remember what we did there. In order to change the formatting of the text, we simply highlighted the text and then we changed any of the formatting. So let's go ahead and practice that with another portion of the document. Let's go down here to 3rd anniversary here in the second paragraph, and let's go ahead and select that. All right, so now that we've selected that, let's go ahead and add bold to that. So we'll click on B, and we'll add bold. Now let's add color. Now let's add red color. The last time I used this button, I changed it to blue. So I'm going to hit my drop down arrow and I'm going to change it to red. And then let's go ahead and change the font of this. Hit your drop down arrow. And let's look here for Arial Black. We'll change that to Arial Black so we can see a change there. Now we're done formatting that, so we're just going to go ahead and click to unselect, and then we'll go ahead and hit the Save button. Okay, so we've saved that. All right, that is the end of Word 1, Part 1. Remember what we have learned: how to create documents, save documents, close documents, open documents. And then we've learned editing and selection techniques. And finally, we learned how to cut, copy, and move text, and then how to format characters. In the next part of this course, which is Word 1, Part 2, you'll learn how to format paragraphs by changing alignment from left to center to justify. You'll also learn how to create bulleted and numbered lists and add borders and shading to paragraphs. You'll learn how to format the page by setting page margins and changing paper size and page orientation and adding headers and footers. And you'll also learn how to do a spell and grammar check on your document. Thank you for attending class, and we'll see you for Word 1, Part 2. Before you leave the class, make sure you close Word, and the best way to do that, to make sure you're completely out of Word, is to go to your File tab, move down to Exit, and as long as you've saved all of your documents in Word, it will return you back to your desktop. And once again, thank you for attending Word 1,